Go to Ed Kracz now, joining us from SI.com. You can follow him on X at KratzE. He joins us right now. Ed, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Thursday morning?
Hey, guys. Doing well.
Yeah.
Waiting for the sun to shine again. No sun for a while.
The sun is never coming out again, Ed Kracz. That is clear. Yeah. How giddy were you to be at OTAs in the bubble yesterday?
Boy, John, I was just, I couldn't stop smiling. That's how happy I was. Now, listen, I was glad. It's always nice to see the guys out on the field, and you get to cover and you get to watch stuff. And, but it's step one of, 1,000 steps before this season starts. And, you got to kind of temper what you see with that, it's still the end of May, and this team is on the field together for really the first time since the Super Bowl, and it's a whole different team. But I was excited. It's always nice to get out there and do your job and, try to uncover some stories. And, there were some things to take away from that first OTA.
What stood out to you from that perspective? For me, it was obviously Bryce Huff not being there. It was Adoree Jackson. I'm surprised that he got the first reps as the starting outside corner and nickel over Kelee Ringo. And also as the safeties, they really rotated the safeties. Even Lewis Cine got some first team reps at safety.
Yeah. It was good to see Lewis Cine get out there and test that gruesome leg injury he had a couple years ago. But to me, he looked a little stiff, probably not playing a whole lot of football the last couple of years, but, maybe he gets a little bit quicker and can become more of himself, the longer he's able to stay out there. But, I just think that they're just throwing guys out there to see what they can do and giving them reps with the first team, second team, whatever. There are some positions obviously locked down. Quinyon Mitchell has they moved him to the left side, which is interesting. That's where Slay played. But I'm not worried about him playing the left side at all. And he was even asked about it, and he said, I can play both. And you're right. I mean, he's right. He can play both. So I'm not worried what side he plays on. That other side, I guess you could say Adoree got some first team reps, but there's nothing locked down for sure at that spot. I mean, Kelee Ringo is still in the mix, and Kelee Ringo was getting, the first team reps during the individual drills. It was the 7-on-7 stuff where we saw Adoree kind of get up first, but Kelee was in with the first team too on those 7-on-7.
Yeah,
so they're just trying stuff, and Fangio's just trying stuff, and we're going to see that continue as we go through here the spring and then the mini camp and then training camp. So you can't. I really don't read too much into the personnel stuff where guys are playing and who's playing first team at this point, because it's going to change. Devin White was the first team linebacker last year during OTAs, and how'd that work out? So you can't really read too much into that kind of stuff at this time of year.
Yeah.
Ed, are you as concerned about the edge rusher group as John McMullen is, man? He's not liking what he's seeing out there after Nolan Smith.
Yeah, it's a little thin. And Jalen Hunt, we talked to him yesterday, and I asked him if he feels any greater weight of expectations on his shoulder, and he doesn't. He just wants to be what he can be. He's not worried about what the team wants him to be. He just wants to be the best he can be. But, you got to figure that he's going to be feeling some pressure. He came in last year as a third-round pick. Everybody thought he was a project, came from a small school. It's going to take time for him to develop. And by the end of the year, he really clicked for him. So you hope he can take that momentum and ride it into this season. And I think he will. But, after Smith and Hunt, it is thin. You're really counting on Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari. And, I saw Uche yesterday. He looks really small. I mean, he's not a really tall guy. He's got some thickness to him, but he's not, a really big guy at all. It's concerning, and Bryce Huff wasn't there. I'm not sure he ever will be there again, but it's thin. And now, we have to figure that Jihad Campbell will come back at some point here during the season. So can the Eagles get by until Campbell is ready? And then, you're probably going to throw him down at the edge sometimes, play him at linebacker. I think he'll be a hybrid, but Campbell should probably be in the mix too at some point this season. I don't know when. But you can't discount him. But after that, I mean, Vic's going to really have to get creative at that spot. Maybe he throws more to Ojomo out on the edge sometimes. He's a little undersized as a D tackle. Vic Fangio has said that. So maybe you throw him out on the edge, but he's going to have to get creative because I think it is very thin out there. And then there's always the possibility that you make a trade or you pick up somebody from another team after he gets cut, or Von Miller is sitting out there.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to fit the profile that Howie Roseman likes at this point. He's 36, I think, Von Miller, but still a productive player. Would you bring him in at some point if you think you're too thin at that spot?
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to do with Bryce Huff, Ed? What's your feeling right now? I know obviously we don't know exactly, but June 1st is on the horizon. He hasn't been at anything all off season. Wasn't there yesterday. What's your feeling right now on what Bryce Huff, how that saga will end?
Yeah, you look at June 1st and his numbers to cut him or to trade him, the Eagles are going to have to eat a lot of money, and really admit a big mistake that they made. So I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I think they're just going to have to move forward with him. I think a big kind of a line in the sand will be, I think, when their mini camp starts. It's a mandatory mini camp. I think it's June 10th it begins, or maybe it's June 9th. I think we only have 1 day availability. I'm not sure of that, but is he going to be here? He wasn't there yesterday. I don't think he was there for anything that they've done so far.
No, he hasn't. I did confirm that he hasn't been at any voluntary, which is a bad sign to me.
Yeah, it is a bad sign. But again, that contract, it's a lot to just, cut the guy. The Eagles are going to take a big hit to cut him and to trade him. And then who's going to want to trade for Bryce Huff after what, he didn't show last year? So I think the Eagles are going to have to find a way to make this work. They're going to have to try to get him into mandatory minicamp. If he doesn't come, on June 10th, then we have a problem, big problem that could carry through the summer because I don't think they're going to cut him. I really don't. I don't think they're going to take this big bath that they would take. Yeah.
I mean, Howie just put James Bradbury on the back of the roster for a year just to not, eat it out. I think he's going to keep him, but we'll see.
Good point.
Yeah, I mentioned that he's proven to be stubborn, but it is interesting because the fact that he's not there, and certainly if June 10th, which is mandatory, that would put the punctuation on it, but he's going to get fined if he doesn't show up for that. But, because he hasn't been here at all, that makes me think they're on the same page. In other words, the Eagles have indicated to him that something's going to happen, stay away, and he agreed to it. That's what it indicates to me because, otherwise you'd be in there working out just to stay in shape for a potential, like Dallas Goedert. We talked to Dallas yesterday. Dallas was pretty, clear that he wasn't going to be here. And then all of a sudden, the doors opened up a little bit and he's back at voluntary stuff, working out, getting ready. It's just a bad sign to me, Ed, that he's not there at all, especially coming off last season when he needs to prove something. Yeah. And with Azeez Ojulari, I joked, Ed, I said, boy, and I only say this to point out one of the reasons Vic Fangio supposedly is not in love with Bryce Huff as a player is the other stuff, not the pass rush, run support, when he uses them in coverage as a flat defender. Boy, Azeez Ojulari looked like a fish out of water when they were dropping him in coverage. And by the way, he's never asked to do it before, probably in New York. So it's no surprise, but that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And that's why you like Jahad Campbell, because he can do that. He can drop in coverage. Yeah. And Jalen Hunt can do that. His background was as a safety.
Zach Bond can do that.
Zach Bond can do it. See, that's why you like those guys. Listen, if I'm the Eagles, and I don't know why they would tell him to stay away. I mean, I think, they need as much help on that edge as they can. Why not bring him in? It doesn't
make a lot of sense to me. Other than if Vic doesn't like him, Vic doesn't like him.
Yeah. But still, you're paying the guy a lot of money. I wouldn't say stay away and just cash your paychecks. I'd bring him in. And, why not just let him do the role he did in New York with the Jets?
I
Just
said the
let
same
him
thing.
be a situational guy. You tried to pigeonhole him and squeeze him, this round peg into a square hole and make him be an all three down player. He can't do it. So just bring him in on pass rush downs. Make him a situational guy. If he plays 15 snaps in that role, great. You're not getting your money's worth unless he's very productive in those 15 snaps, but still, you're getting something out of him rather than just parking him on the bench and not playing him.
Yeah, I agree. I've mentioned that a couple times. All right, let's switch to offense. I thought both quarterbacks looked pretty sharp.
Yeah.
If you go back to last season, boy, it was really ugly at OTA's last offseason with Kellen Moore coming in with new ideas and fresh ideas. I thought it was pretty seamless this year. Everybody knows Kevin Patullo. He's been there since 2021. I think it was obviously things worked out. It's not like it can't work out because Kellen Moore proved it last year. They won the Super Bowl. But just for this first step, I thought it was a lot cleaner than last year offensively.
I agree. I mean, last year it was kind of a concern to see Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was really rocky in the OTAs that we saw in the mini camp. He had a hard time figuring out where to go with the ball. And when he figured it out, he wasn't accurate with it. So this year it's different. And you would think it would be, because I don't think this offense is going to change a whole lot with Kevin Patullo. He'll bring in some of his own wrinkles maybe, but it's still a lot of the schemes and concepts are the same. You remember last year, Jalen saying that 95% of the schemes and concepts were new. And that was a big storyline for me going between training camp and the end of OTAs, that 5-week period. I was thinking, if Jalen Hurts doesn't come back and have this figured out, it's going to be a struggle. But then he came out in training camp and had a terrific training camp. So he was really able to put it together. But that won't be the case this year. Jalen looks sharp. And you mentioned McKee. I thought the Eagles, it looked like the right decision to trade Kenny Pickett and elevate McKee to the number 2 role, because McKee, I think he can be a starter in this league. And he came out and looked great yesterday. And again, you want to temper it. Yeah. For, first step of many steps here in the offseason, but he looked good. And, you have a good body of work from him in the preseason. He played a couple regular season games last year, but that deep throw he made to Darius Cooper was just beautiful. A real over-the-shoulder throw that the defensive back couldn't get anywhere near. And Cooper, who I thought looked pretty good yesterday, an undrafted free agent from Tarleton State, of all places.
State.
Yeah, I don't even know where that is.
The football factory of Tarleton State.
Where is it, John? Do you know? I don't even know where Tarleton State.
I don't.
I don't either. Though. I'll say Texas, because a lot of good football is played in Texas. But
it is Texas. Well done, Ed Kracz.
Yeah,
Stephenville, Texas is where it is.
All right. Yeah, he looked good, and that was a great throw that McKee made. And he made another throw where he rolled out to his right, where he kind of threw across his body to the inside of the field, made a connection there. So, I really like McKee. He's a smart kid. I think he takes chances. And he could be a good quarterback in this league, but he won't have a chance here with Jalen Hurts in control.
By the way, Kenny Pickett might be more popular today than he ever was in Philadelphia. I don't know if you saw, he spoke in Cleveland yesterday, and he said, "I'm extremely grateful for my time in Philly. I think I was just shown how it's supposed to be done, really from the top down, day in and day out. How to be a successful team, quarterback, organization." Spoke very highly of the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe Eagles fans will give him a little bit of a break.
Yeah,
giving them their flowers.
Well, listen, I didn't have any problem with Kenny Pickett.
I thought he was a good backup.
I think the Steelers gave up on him too soon. And, Terry Bradshaw, I think yesterday came out and ripped the Steelers for getting rid of Kenny Pickett so quickly. He ripped them for, giving Aaron Rodgers this long leash to decide whether he wants to play in Pittsburgh. But, the point is he ripped the Steelers for getting rid of Pickett too soon. And he's right. He had nothing around him. They didn't have a running game. They didn't have an offensive line. He comes to Philadelphia. He's got those things. I think it's a good thing that he said that, I learned how to do it the right way. I hope he goes to Cleveland and wins the job. I really do. I think he deserves an opportunity, especially after helping win a Super Bowl here last year.
What do you think the Eagles could get for Tanner McKee, Ed?
Hmm.
You think they would try and trade him, or you think they want him as the backup this year? I feel like they would want him, but I don't know. John brought up a second rounder. I'm like, I don't know if they'll get that, but if they get offered it, it wouldn't surprise me if they took it.
Yeah, I'm not sure they'd be ready to hand the reins to Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Kyle McCord at this point. I think what's McCord or McKee have 2 years left on his contract, his rookie deal. So I think you probably keep him, at this stage.
Well, let me. I don't think they want to trade Tanner McKee.
No.
I just say because of the unique situation going on in New Orleans, and you have Kellen Moore there, and they have nothing. They have Tyler Shuck and Jake Hayner and Spencer Rattler. If Kellen Moore wakes up one day and they want to give an overpay, a second round, I got to listen to that. If they want to give up a second round pick for Tanner McKee, Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kyle McCord probably aren't ready. But
no, they're not. McCord, I think, had one pass attempt yesterday.
No, he didn't even get any reps, really.
He's so far away from being a backup. And, DTR, I know he has a couple starts in this league, but I don't think you want him stepping in for Hurts if Hurts were to get hurt again, which he seems to, especially late in the season. He always seems to miss a couple games. I don't think you want DTR stepping in. So, listen, the New Orleans situation's a wild card. I thought they would make a play for Kenny Pickett, to be honest with you. I thought, the connection with Kellen Moore made sense, but they didn't make that play. And I saw Kellen Moore come out yesterday and kind of praise Spencer Rattler for having a command and, understanding of the offense. Listen, maybe he's putting lipstick on a pig here, but
he's not going to rip his own guy, but I can't imagine he's comfortable with that quarterback. Remember, when Kenny was available, Derek Carr was still there. It was a whole lot different.
Yeah, good point.
With now it's Tyler Shuck or bust, which is pretty much a guaranteed bust, at least early. Not that he can't develop, but they're going to probably struggle pretty mightily. So I'm with you. I don't think they want to trade Tanner McKee. I don't think they're going to trade Tanner McKee, but will he ever have a higher value if Kellen Moore comes calling this offseason? Maybe not. So you got to weigh that if you're Howie Roseman, at least. And call probably never comes, but
And Howie Roseman and Mickey Loomis have a history of doing some business together. It never really favored the Saints whenever.
Mickey might be scared off by that.
But I'm not sure you would give up a second for McKee at this point. If you're the Saints, but you're probably trying to get him maybe for a third or a fourth, but the Eagles aren't going to do that for sure. And like you said, they don't want to trade him. This kid's good. I really think he can start, and there's always quarterback needy teams that could come calling. And I think another year in the Eagles system, continuing to improve, continuing to show what he can do already, will only help going forward. And maybe next year, some team will come sniffing around with a number 2 pick for Tanner McKee.
What do you think of Dallas Goedert? He's beating Zach Bond in the middle of it. Like, what was this about? What was this nonsense about?
Those 7-on-7 drills it's so hard to read a defense on those. They're so tilted toward the offense, in my opinion. There's no pass rush. You can stand back there forever and wait for somebody to break loose. But my impression was Dallas Goedert looks like he's ready to go. And I think he, had a couple catches. He got knocked down. Tristan McCollum gave him a nice little shot when he caught one over the middle and knocked him to the ground. And Goddard got up, slapped hands with McCollum, no hard feelings. But I thought he looked good. I thought he looked ready to go. He's happy with this contract he signed. He said that yesterday.
I don't know if he's happy, but
well, he seemed to indicate he was happy. Now he was asked, could you become, one of an all-time Eagle and stay here forever? And I don't think that will happen. But if he has a big year, some other team's going to come calling for sure.
I don't know. Ready? Here's the situation. The Eagles passing game goes from 31st in the NFL to top 10 or top 12. Dallas Goedert has a monster year. The outlook of the team looks a little different after this season. Do they try and keep Dallas Goedert at that point? They still don't have anybody after Dallas Goedert.
No, they don't. And this would have been the year to get a tight end in the draft. It was so tight and rich.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, so you're right, but you look at the reality of the situation, and Jalen Carter next year will be 1 year closer to getting his extension. Probably should get it after his third year, and that's going to be a monster deal. And then you look at Jordan Davis; they picked up that team option for 2026. That's a big deal. And then you have the contract of Jalen Hurts. That cap hit's going to go up next year. Some of these other guys, A.J. Brown, all these contracts they sign players to are all going to increase next year in terms of the cap. The Eagles have been lucky that the cap has increased by great amounts over the past few years. I hope it goes up again. It probably will. But yeah, I just think the reality is if Goddard has this monster year, like you said, Zander, I just don't think the Eagles could keep him. The best scenario would be if he doesn't have a monster year and no other team wants him. Maybe he comes back on another 1 year, $9 million deal or $8 million deal. Maybe
I'll say this, Ed's right about 7-on-7s. I mean, it's totally tilted towards the offense, but when Dallas is on the field versus Grand Calcaterra or Kyle Granson or Harrison Bryant, it's freaking noticeable. The difference.
And Patullo even said that when I asked him about Goddard, if he was getting more restful night's sleep, if he was able to sleep easier with Goddard under contract. And he said, yeah, he goes, you could really feel his presence on the first day of OTAs. And we saw that presence yesterday. I mean, Dallas Goedert is still, in my opinion, one of the top, 5 tight ends, would you say, guys? I mean, 5 tight ends in the league.
When he's on his game, I think he's a top 5, but he's not always. I mean, he doesn't always get the ball in this offense. So,
well, that's the thing for Zander's scenario to happen. Top 10 passing offense, huge year for Dallas. I mean, Saquon Barkley's got to get hurt. And you don't wish for that.
Well, my estimation would be just if defenses look at what the Chiefs did in the Super Bowl and say, we're going to do that every game to try and slow their running game down. They're not always going to be successful, but if he comes down, 600 yards closer to the pack and the passing game has to elevate, maybe Goddard can take what he did in the playoffs and do that all year,
Yeah, he had a great playoff run. He led the team in catches and yards in those 4 games. So, yeah, I mean, they're clearly a better team with Dallas Goedert in whatever role he plays. I mean, he's very effective in the run game, blocking, to me, which isn't easy to do for tight ends these days, is to block, but he does a nice job with that. But, yeah, I just think that this probably will be his last year. He could have a big year. I don't know if he will because of all the weapons, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be sticking around beyond this year unless something crazy happens. But just enjoy Goddard while you have him, I guess, because this might be the end of the line here in Philly for him.
Another guy offensively. Now, Devontae wasn't there. Nothing to worry about. AJ was there, but did not participate in team drills, so they were taking it easy on AJ. So the receivers were Jahan Dotson, Terrace Marshall, and Anais Smith, and then other guys rotated. I was pretty impressed by Jahan Dotson. Really had a good comeback route on Quinyon Mitchell at some point. I'm still getting used to him as number 2 because that's Blay's number.
Yeah.
And Danny Gray as well. I think he's got a chance. Had one drop, but he also had some big catches as well. Maybe a little bit more depth at wide receiver. I mean, they've been getting through with the Johnny Wilsons of the world.
He didn't practice yesterday either.
No, he didn't practice. I think Jahan Dotson, people don't realize it. That guy can play. He's not 16th overall pick good, like where Washington drafted him, but boy, he's the best third receiver they have had in years, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just that they don't get those third receivers in this offense don't get the traffic that other third receivers in this league would. We've seen it with the Zach Pascals and, Olamide Zacchaeuses and
Wes Watkins, Julio Jones at the end.
Yeah. But I think, for sure Dotson can play. And, listen, he didn't have the benefit of going through the OTAs with the Eagles last year or even training camp because he came late, the end of August. So, he was playing catch up from the start, and that's not an easy thing to do, obviously. But I think he got there. He made a huge catch in the Super Bowl that set up the Eagles' first touchdown. Yeah, I think if the Eagles look his way, he'll be more productive this year in this offense. It's just a matter of looking his way, because like we say, Brown, Smith, and Goddard, those are the three guys, and then you mix in Barkley and what's left over for Dotson to
There's
do.
only one
Yeah.
football. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I like Jahan Dotson. I always like Jahan Dotson. I think he's a fine third receiver. It's just they don't really use a third receiver a whole lot.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. Ed, I want to ask you about somebody on the other side of the ball right now. And you brought him up a little earlier when we talked about contracts coming up. And I think this is a big year for this player. What will Jordan Davis be in 2025 to you, Ed Kracz?
I think he's a candidate for me to have a breakout year. He's had solid years. He's not asked to play all three downs. He's got this reputation as kind of the run stopper, and he comes off the field in passing downs. But, talking to Clint Hurd at the Super Bowl, the defensive line coach, he's very high on Jordan Davis being a three-down player. They're trying to get him to have more of a mindset of, listen, go get the quarterback. You don't have to sit there and just take up blockers and let linebackers clean up the play. But that's a mindset that he's played with his whole life. He's never been asked to go after the quarterback from high school to Georgia, and then his first couple of years here in the pros. So I think Davis has the skill set to get after the quarterback. 2 huge sacks in the postseason. I think that was a sign of some growth, some things that Clint Hurd talked about. I think he's going to have a big year. I think you're going to see him more on third down, especially as we talked about the defensive edge position being a little light. You might have to slide Jalen Carter out to the edge on occasion and make him an edge rusher. Like I said, I think Vic's going to have to get creative if this is the current crop of defensive edge rushers that you have. So maybe Jalen Carter goes out there and Davis stays on the field as a D tackle along with, maybe whoever else, Booker, and then you throw Moro Adromo on the outside. Again, these are all, things that could happen. I'm not saying they will, but Vic's been creative before. But I love Davis. I think he's going to have a nice season. I think he could have 5 sacks. I think he's going to play more. He's only played like 35 to 40% of the snaps. I think that's going to go up over 50%. But a lot of it's going to be in his lap too. He's going to have to find that conditioning level that will allow him to do that. I think he has shown that he can play more. I think he's in good shape, but again, we'll see. 17 games is a long season. Can he consistently play over half of the snaps every game? We'll see. But I'm high on Davis. I really think he can become, more of a pass rusher as a 3-down player.
It's an interesting scenario with the contract looming too.
Yeah,
because you're
right.
wondering what do they value him at with if he's just a run stopper, but if he does add that to his arsenal, I think that changes his value big time.
Yeah, and they'll probably try to renegotiate, right? I mean, do you want him going into his 5th year, making $14 million, John?
Yeah,
something like
14,
that.
Yeah.
And then
they definitely want to get an extension done, but
Yes.
the problem is, it's tough if you're not a 3-down player, it's tough to give big money to. Then Jalen Carter, since that's going to affect it. Can you pay 2 guys big time money? They couldn't do it with Milt Williams, so if it gets up to that range, then you're really in trouble. So yeah, it's difficult, but that's Eagle problems, first world problems, because they have too many good players and you can't pay them all. That's
right.
what it comes down to. And that's a good position. You'd rather be in that position. At Kracz, make sure you follow Ed on the X platform, reademsi.com/NFL/Eagles. Did a great job on the Dallas Goedert return yesterday. Had a bunch of stories up yesterday. You're going to see another 300-word article on Dallas Goedert for some reason. I have no idea why, but I digress. That's a inside joke for Ed. But I thought your most interesting story was Cooper DeJean.
Yeah.
And the outside-inside conversation. Everybody wants to keep him inside. The business of football, we just talked about it with Jordan Davis. You saw it this offseason. Houston, in the same week, made Derek Stingley the highest paid outside cornerback in history, $90 million. They made Jalen Petrie the highest nickel slot back in history. It was like 40-something. I think 40, a little bit less than 40. That's the difference in money. Can the Eagles long term, they almost have to play him outside from a business perspective. Does it start this year, Ed Kracz?
It might. I mean, that to me was one of my biggest takeaways from yesterday, and there were a few that we've talked about, but was moving Cooper outside. I mean, he got some reps out there, and I think if they're not comfortable with Ringo or Jackson starting there, don't be surprised if they move him. Now that opens up the slot, which is a very important position in the league these days. And maybe that evolves, John. Maybe slot guys over the next 2 years start to get more money because it is a valuable position. And if Cooper stays there in 2 years, he'll be ready for a new deal. Maybe he gets paid as a slot guy. But as it is now, it's the outside guys that are making money. And we could see, him move outside. The Eagles are going to give Davis, I think, a chance to be a 3-down guy and to show his value when it comes to contracts. And I think they would probably do the same with Cooper, move him outside at some point to let him show his value in terms of getting paid. That's the Eagles aren't going to, try to stifle your growth and, keep you down because it favors them in contract negotiations. I think the Eagles are a fair team and they're a good organization to play for. And they're going to give guys a chance to make as much as they can. And if that means moving Cooper outside because the outside guys are still getting paid more than the slot guys, then I think they'll do it. Does it happen this year? I don't know if Mac McWilliams will be ready to play in the slot, or B.J. Mays, who was a slot guy at Texas A&M. He was the guy that got beat on the deep throw McKee had to Darius Cooper.
Well, it's Darius Cooper, so
yeah, and it's B.J. Mays. I mean, I don't think any of these guys are going to be ready to play the slot. I don't know who would play the slot right now if you move
Harry
Cooper.
Nickerson, baby.
Perry Nickerson. Is he still here?
I he's still there. Yeah. Everybody loves Perry, but they know there's limitations. But
so I don't think the Eagles are ready to move him outside at this point. I think they have options, but I think they're getting him ready. And if there's an injury or something crazy happens during the course of the 17-game season, he'll have played there. He'll kind of have an idea of what he's supposed to do there. But I think long-term, that could be the home for him.
Ed Kracz, good stuff. Make sure you guys follow Ed on Twitter at KratzE. Read all his work at SI.com. Ed, I got one last question for you. You've been a Nakobe Dean truther for a long time. You've been a supporter of Nakobe's in this early part of his career. To me, the future in Philly looks bleak. I won't lie to you. Even if he plays great, I don't see him giving him a contract. If he doesn't play great, they got Trotter, they got Jahad Campbell, whatever his role might be. They drafted Smile Munden. What do you see coming up here for Nakobe Dean? Do you see it the same way I do, or do you think he has a chance to be, in Philly for a long time?
Yeah, no, I agree, Zander. I mean, I just don't know how you keep him, and I love Nakobe. I think he's a great leader. I think he's a good locker room person. He's a very good football player, but injuries are always the story with him. And again, when is his season going to begin? Is it going to start September 4th against the Cowboys? Probably not. And that's going to limit what he'll be able to get when he hits free agency. And he could be a player, Zander, that comes back on a 1-year deal. Maybe they go year to year with Nakobe Dean. I don't know. I mean, the story's still to be written. But right now, I'm with you. I just don't think his long-term future is in Philadelphia. But I don't see him getting a 3 or 4 year contract somewhere else with another team at this point. So, a 1-year option or 1-year contract could be in play for him. And maybe that's with the Eagles. But again, it's going to be up to when does his season start and how does he look coming back from this patellar tendon injury?
Yep, agreed. Good stuff, Ed Kracz. We appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for joining in. As always, you got great stuff. We're waiting for the overreactions. They're highly talked about here.
I don't think Ed's doing them. I tried to give him some. I was in his ear.
I didn't do them because I don't want to overreact after one OTA. I want to see things settle a little bit before I can.
4-win team, Ed.
Did the pushback get to you, Ed? Did the weasels on Twitter dissuade you from making an overreaction piece? No,
I try not to let the weasels on X impact my thoughts, but no, I'll come back with the overreactions. Like I said, I didn't want to. There was so much to overreact to that would have been just wrong, plain wrong. in my opinion. After I know John gave me some, but I didn't agree with them in some cases. But I'll come back. Maybe Tuesday. I think we have the availability. I think Wednesday they were saying the playground build for the Eagles is going to be Wednesday.
Most likely Tuesday, but not 100%.
Not 100%, but I think it will be Tuesday. So maybe I'll come out with some overreactions on Tuesday. And listen, I didn't have my notebook. John showed up with his reporter's notebook. I had never seen him with that before. Now maybe he said he uses it in training camp.
I got like 10 of them. I never throw them away in case I have to go back to them. But here's the thing about Ed. He's like, I've never seen you with a notebook before. I'm like, I do it every time at practice.
Yeah.
And that brings me the story of Brian, the intern, who would welcome us every day. Good morning, every day, sitting at the table. And one day I said to Ed, I forgot her name. Sorry, Brian. And I said, hey, what's the name of the girl who hands out the credentials in the morning? And Ed's like, who's that? What are you talking about? Walks by her every day. Every day.
Yeah. Well, listen, that has nothing to do with you showing up with a notebook.
Yeah,
I know you flipped through some pages and showed me some of your notes that you made.
My point is you're not observational in certain instances, which, by the way, is not a good thing for a reporter. You should notice Ryan, and you should notice my notebook.
Yeah,
look at that. This is a little Sports Illustrated on Sports Illustrated crime this morning. Johnny Mac coming at Ed snapping back. I love it. Ed, thank you for joining, man. We love having you on Birds 365. We appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to you again soon, all right?
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
bud.
you
too, Ed. There's Ed Kracz joining us here on Birds 365. Great stuff from Ed Kracz. Great stuff from Johnny Mac. Good opening hour here, breaking down the OTA. John, I know we joked about the OTA going into it, but I think we got a pretty good amount of information from OTA number one from you and the rest of the beat reporters. A lot of good stuff to talk about. A lot of good takeaways from the OTA.
Yeah. Did Elliott do percentages, completions?
He did. He put up the completion. Wait, I'll tell you what, though, and I know everybody likes to joke about Elliott, but I see it from a business perspective. Now, ESPN, John, yesterday, ESPN put out all four of the quarterbacks in Cleveland's statistics for OTA in Cleveland. I'm like, are you kidding me? But the point is, Elliott was ahead of his time.
First of all, I love Elliott. A good dude. I say it all the time.
He does a good job.
Good person. I have no problem. But I only bring it up because, and it does work because 40 people asked me, is Elliott doing complete? I'm like, ask Elliott. I don't know. That's why I said it. That's the only reason I was bringing it up. So I don't know if he's doing. I mean, if you ask me my honest, they don't mean anything. But people like him. I'm not doubting that. I just don't think they're important, as I've explained when you're watching practice and what they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, that's the only because I got so many people. Is Elliott doing completion percentages at OTAs? I got that like 5 times. It's at Elliott Shore Parks, 1L. Ask Elliott. I don't know what he's doing. That's all.
He does a good job stirring the pot a little bit. Good stuff there. Great stuff from Ed Kracz today. We'll be looking forward to reading all Ed's work, all of Johnny Mac's work at SI as well.